When it comes to Jupiter transiting Gemini, good things come in twos. So let's discuss the blessings that are headed your way from May 2024 to June 2025. Hi, my name is Comet, and welcome to my cosmic corner of the internet, where we discuss all things astrology, and today all things Jupiter in Gemini, what this means for the collective and what this means for your universe, where your luck awaits, what manifestations can come your way, where you can expand your universe. Because if you're familiar with me, my channel, my cosmic corner of the internet, you know that I'm big on co-creative astrology. So there are ways to work with Jupiter in order to particularly enhance the opportunities and blessings that are coming your sign's way. But it's also important to highlight that even though the grand benefic is all about luck and abundance and opportunities and travel and expansion, there is a downside to Jupiter. And so we will talk about how this may manifest within the collective, how this may manifest within your universe, so that you can intentionally move into this transit, really reaping all of this Jupiterian energy of expansiveness, of curiosity, of connection, of community. We'll talk about all of the Gemini themes in order to reap the maximum amount of blessings that this transit foretells. So within this video, we will break down everything that you need to know about Jupiter's transit through Gemini, how you may see these themes weaved into pop culture, into overall society, social media, marketing, what have you. We will talk about the potential downsides to this transit and how to avoid them. We will break down how to align yourself with these Gemini energies in order to manifest more luck and more opportunity within your universe. And then we'll break it down into a sign-by-sign analysis around what particular life arena is being activated for you during this time and how you can lean into that life arena in order to reap all of the auspicious blessings that Jupiter, even when it's transiting the sign of its detriment, is sure to bring. And as we'll discuss within the next section, Jupiter in Gemini is emboldening the eternal student. It is emboldening the desire within the collective to invest within our brain, to invest within our skill set, to be open to different perspectives or different topics that can help us progress forward. And I just want to share, if you are feeling this call with this curious energy to invest in your study of astrology and you resonate with me and my style, I want to share that I do have an astrology course. It's called Self Care Astrology. There's a variety of tiers. There's self-study if you want to go at your own pace. There's opportunities to work one-on-one with me. We can go back and forth on voice memos. That's very Gemini-like. There's opportunities to add on one-on-ones with me where we can connect on Zoom. But whichever tier that you select, you will also be invited to all of the group classes that we are having in 2024. So we have a group class every single month. The topics, the times are completely decided by the individuals within the collective. May's class, we're diving deeply into Chiron, its role within our birth charts, how we can liberate ourselves using this part of our birth chart. So if that sounds intriguing, make sure to check that out. But do know, even if you're watching this video at a later time, we have new classes every single month utilizing your chart in examples. So you get personal insights as well as investing in your own mental toolkit, expanding your knowledge. So the link to join this cosmic community that I love so much is available below. You can use the promo code Gemini in order to save 22% on any tier that you select. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take it into Jupiter in Gemini, communication, curiosity, and comedy. So Jupiter will transit the mutable air sign Gemini from May 25th, 2024 until June 9th, 2025. And what you need to know firstly is that Jupiter does not particularly like this section of the sky. It's not so pleased here. In dignity, it's in what's called its detriment placed in this sign. Now, does this mean we're all cursed? Absolutely not. It just means that some of these Jupiterian themes of luck and faith may be a little muted and a little understated, because let's keep in mind, the very planet of Jupiter, yes, it's around optimism, and it really is a planet that operates on faith and meaning. Now, throughout this next year or so, Jupiter will be answering to Mercury, who is the planet of logic. So whereas Jupiter is about that faith around, it's all gonna work out, it's all gonna come together, Mercury wants to see receipts that it's all gonna come together. Mercury wants to see the facts around what time is it gonna come together, how is it gonna come together, how are all the problems going to be solved. Like with Jupiter answering to Mercury, we can find that we are a little bit more likely during this time to really wanna understand the why of things. There could be more of an emphasis upon logic, upon asking asking questions rather than operating through this lens of belief or of faith. So the two energies are quite different than one another. Jupiter much prefers being in Gemini's opposite sign, Sagittarius, where it rules. And also when we consider that Jupiter is about belief systems, with Jupiter in a Mercury ruled sign, there can be an energy around questioning things that you used to believe in strongly. Questioning, why do I believe what it is that I believe? Contemplating other people's perspectives. The energy of Gemini is around duality versus the energy of Jupiter is around the big picture, our own sense of meaning. So yes, these energies are not necessarily compatible. Now, there is a way to work with this energy. I just wanted to let you know firstly that if you were expecting during this time when Jupiter enters Gemini that it's just going to enter the arena of your chart that it'll transit through, we'll break that down in our sign-by-sign analysis and just give you all of these blessings right away. Not so fast. Like with the energy of Gemini, you can absolutely get blessings, but it may come via learning opportunities. It may come via people that you are connected to. It may even come in very unusual ways. Like Mercury is the trickster after all. So there could be this energy around universe. I really want this house. And it just so happens that you randomly get a package one day and it's a little doll house that accidentally got delivered to your house. And you're like, okay, universe, but not that. Like, that's why I'm saying it's important to have a sense of humor with Jupiter transiting Gemini, to not take yourself so seriously. Like Gemini is that energy around staying light with life, being open to laugh at ourselves, or even seeing another perspective around, like on one hand, it's so annoying that this random dollhouse got delivered to my house when I was wanting to manifest an actual house to live in. But on the other hand, it's kind of funny. Like Gemini energy is absolutely representative around, on the other hand, like there's always another perspective. There's always another angle that you can view things. And working that muscle is going to be important. It's important to highlight that Jupiter is transiting an air sign throughout the next year, and air is removed from a situation. It's a bit detached. It's looking at the issue itself. And so there may be an ask for you to be able to do that, even if there are certain things that you've held strongly or certain manifestations that you want to see. It may be important to be a little bit more detached about it, a little bit more curious about it, a little bit more able to laugh about it. And again, just reaping all of the lessons that this particular chapter of your journey has in store. Because Jupiter is a planet that's all about faraway places, foreign lands. And Gemini is about our neighbors and our neighborhood and the people around us that we connect with on a very kind of small talk basis. And the energy of Jupiter being around wisdom, it's this invitation around wisdom can await us within our own backyard. It could be found within the people around us. There's lots that we can learn here. So if you're waiting for these grandiose things to manifest within your life around, that's when I'll finally start living, is when this manifests within my life, or I get this faraway journey. Jupiter and Gemini may be asking you, what lessons do you have to wrap up within this particular chapter? Where can you make connections with people who are in your own backyard? Now, outside of our own backyard, Gemini has to do with communication overall. And in the history portion of this video, we'll break down the significant things that have happened with Jupiter and Gemini and social media. But Gemini is around communication and sharing of ideas. Again, in this contemplation of other perspective, it's going to be important to, yes, listen to others as well as to speak your own perspective. We can learn a lot from each other during this transit. And I'm curious if this will be helpful, perhaps collectively, around just being able to communicate with people who may have beliefs that differ than your own, but being able to hear them out. Like Jupiter and Gemini is this very communicative, connected energy. And it's going to be important for you to listen. There can be wisdom that awaits you just within even ordinary interactions, as well as for you to communicate, for you to speak. With Jupiter and Gemini, fortune favors those who communicate. If you have any inkling, any desire within you that you've been wanting to write a book, you've been wanting to start a podcast, you've been wanting to start a YouTube channel, you've been wanting to create a TikTok, Jupiter and Gemini is your time to do just that. We will talk within the aspect part. I do have some concerns just around censorship and things of that nature with Jupiter squaring Saturn. We'll talk about that more so, but overall, as a transit, Jupiter and Gemini is such an aligned time to get the word out there, to start communicating, to start sharing. Even if you have no interest in being a content creator, really contemplate for your business aims. This is the time in which word of mouth marketing is going to skyrocket and going to be more important during this time. And the communication arts can really experience a boost during this time. Now, the downside of that is that Jupiter and Gemini, it's giving very noisy. It's a very noisy transit. Like Jupiter expands what it goes through. And with the energy of Gemini, there could just be a lot more talking, a lot more discussion, a lot more social media, a lot more news. Like there's just going to be a lot of messages out there. And a concern that I have around this transit, particularly with its square to Saturn, is if these sources are being vetted, if misinformation might sort of expand during this time. That is a concern that I have. But overall, with Jupiter in Gemini, it is an aligned time. If you've been wanting to add your voice to certain online communities, if you've wanted to get the word out there around a certain service that you provide or a certain cause that you're passionate about, with Jupiter in Gemini, definitely mobilize communication, definitely mobilize your own voice. Fortune favors those who are communicating during this time. I also want to highlight on this note of fortune, fortune favors the curious. And with Jupiter in Gemini, it's important to be curious. Like I said, be curious around what's happening within your own backyard, within the people around you, within colleagues and classmates. Like you don't need to go to universities and faraway lands in order to source wisdom for your life. And with the energy of Jupiter in Gemini, we could definitely experience an expansion in curiosity. You could find you're feeling more inclined during this transit to want to learn new skills. You're wanting to study new topics. You're wanting to dive into new realms of knowledge. This is where the downside comes in, because Jupiter is so expansive that with the energy of Gemini, there could just be this restlessness that's showing up mentally. We could be very curious, wanting to learn a little about a lot. But again, that restless Gemini energy taking over and kind of like pivoting or diving into a new topic or not going deep into this topic necessarily. Like there definitely can be this insatiable hunger of knowledge, but it could be, you know, starting to learn Spanish and then shifting gears and wanting to know everything about underwater basket weaving the next week. Like there definitely could be a desire to learn new things, learn new skills, and fortune awaits you when you are open to learn new skills, okay, and learn new knowledge. But distraction may be a challenge during this time. The energy of Jupiter just gives bottomless pit of knowledge. And you know, Gemini overall is a sign that really emboldens. Like there's always something that you can learn. Every single person represents a new person that you can learn from and connect to. And this is such a gift. But it just feels like Jupiter in Gemini, there may be certain parts of, you know, jack of all trades, master of none energy kind of weaved into the collective during this time, as well as potentially that balance of listening and talking getting out of whack. Being very intentional that you are listening and benefiting from others' perspectives as you share your own. Because as I said about Jupiter and Gemini, there could be a lot of talking, and you don't learn when you're talking, right? You only learn when other people are talking. And on that note, to my overthinkers, Jupiter in Gemini is giving a lot of overthinking. Like I said, we now have Jupiter a Mercury ruled sign, so there could be an energy around, well, what if this happens? Or what if this happens? Or have we considered it from this lens? It could be a very mentally busy time. It could be a very noisy time. Like I said, there's a lot of thoughts, there's a lot of ideas, and you can align with this energy intentionally by staying curious, staying open to other people's perspectives, investing in networking or investing in opportunities to connect with new people, investing energy in social media, word of mouth marketing, sales overall, laughing at yourself when things go awry, being open to view every day as an opportunity to learn, investing in your skill set, being open to new classes, new opportunities to invest within your mind. Just be conscious of the potential downsides of Gemini, which can be overthinking, over-talking, and overcommitting how many different subjects you're going to learn without really honing your focus around what you want to expand your knowledge in the most. So let's build on these Jupiter and Gemini themes by analyzing who Jupiter is talking to throughout its transit. So when it enters Gemini in May 2024, it is then building to trine Pluto in June 2024, which again, with Jupiter in Gemini trine Pluto to Aquarius, this is why I was saying within the overall portion that this is a very supportive time around mobilizing social media in order to affect societal or humanitarian change. Like social media or communication can be an important vehicle to get out the news on important topics, to mobilize audiences towards donating, to spread information, to gather together support. This can be an important vehicle for transformation. But with that being said, later on in the year, namely in August 2024, as well as December 2024, Jupiter will square off with Saturn. And I do feel, since Saturn is the planet of restriction, I do feel like there will be some restrictions on social media. This could absolutely show up around censorship. This could additionally show up around, TikTok being banned, like things of that nature. Jupiter square Saturn could be sort of trying to dull the noise, the chitter-chatter that can actually be helping to affect certain societal change. So it does feel like there can be certain themes around voices being silenced, or an attempt of voices being silenced in the name of keeping a certain status quo. That does feel like something that is threaded into the rest of 2024. Jupiter will also square off with Saturn in 2025, but at that point, Jupiter will actually be in Cancer. And that's intriguing to tune into the differences, because whenever we look at planets aspecting one another, we have to look at who's winning the battle. Dignity-wise, like which planet is stronger. And in terms of the battle between Jupiter and Saturn this year, 2024, Saturn's winning the battle because Jupiter is in its detriment in Gemini. It's weakened here. Saturn isn't necessarily comfy in Pisces, but it's peregrine, it's neutral. So when the two get together, Saturn wins, which is sort of like status quo or bureaucracy, kind of like winning out. And then next year, Jupiter in Cancer is exalted and Saturn in Aries is in its fall. So Jupiter wins next year. So if there is any silencing of our voice or of sharing on social media or of getting information out there, I do feel like there could be a temporary loss of the battle this year, but winning of the big picture potentially next year with these two getting together. So look out for the building around that story. And other themes to look out for when it comes to that square. Like I said, Jupiter in Gemini, it's giving very noisy. It's giving very noisy, and it's important to, share your voice, share your perspective. But what I want to say is I do feel there could be real life consequences to information that is shared. I definitely think that Jupiter in Gemini will bring in a lot of misinformation or just headlines that go viral or just information that's not true. Like, keep in mind, Gemini is kind of a gossipy energy, and like in a game of telephone, things and information can get distorted. But with the square to Saturn, I just see that there could be consequences for spreading or perpetuating misinformation, or there even could be consequences for speaking or promoting or communicating on certain topics. I could equally see that coming into existence. And as I've been sharing, it's important to share, it's important to communicate. But with Jupiter in Gemini, sometimes there can be a temptation to speak about something before we necessarily understand all of the nuance of it. And I just feel like with Jupiter in Gemini squaring Saturn, there can be certain reality checks for certain information that is being shared or being put out there, especially if it's not necessarily grounded in reality. Like, Jupiter in Gemini is kind of like social media movements, and those things can really build a lot of steam. And with the square to Saturn, it's like it could distract us from like the real stuff that's going on, or just create harm or like real life consequences is what it's giving with the two. So it's just an important time to be discerning. Like, I think Jupiter and Gemini will be helpful around asking the deeper questions, because with the square to Saturn, if there are certain just like viral social media movements or information that's been distorted or manipulated, with the square to Saturn, we may start to see some of the consequences from that, from the perpetuation of certain misinformation, from the mobilization of certain social media audiences without understanding the full nuances of a situation, or even real life consequences around a game of telephone or sharing information that was not the truth. So I do see something like that coming in. So just important, before you share your voice on a certain issue, like really do your due diligence, use discernment. With Jupiter and Gemini, there's going to be a lot of talking, but we equally need to make sure we're listening. With Jupiter and Gemini, there could be a pressure around, why aren't you saying something? Why aren't you communicating? Why aren't you using your voice? And you should use your voice, like I've been saying with Jupiter and Gemini. But with Jupiter and Gemini squaring Saturn, our voice carries weight. What we add our perspective on carries weight and can bring consequences if we are not doing our own due diligence to educate ourselves. So I just want to say, if there are certain movements or there are certain causes or there are certain news that come out during this time, I'm not saying that it's not important to communicate about it, to do your best to support these causes. All I'm saying, with the energy of Jupiter and Gemini, it's important to understand that our words matter. Use them intentionally. Do your research. With Jupiter and Gemini, it just feels like there's an emphasis on talking and speaking up and gaining awareness. But with the square to Saturn, it's like, let's also ensure that our voice is used intentionally and used to affect change within our physical world. That it's not talking just to talk, just to act like you're knowledgeable about the topic or act like you care, right? Our voice matters, our voice has weight, and our voice can have consequences if we are not doing our due diligence around digging into it. And I just feel like this transit completely encapsulates the current state of social media around just wanting, the content delivered to us in shorter and shorter vehicles, like short attention span, where it's like we're not going to get the full nuance on a topic when we just watch, a 30-second TikTok. Again, that could be a great starting place, but it may be important to dig in a little deeper during this time. It's just going to be important to do your due diligence and be discerning around information just to ensure it's not distorted, because I just feel like with Jupiter square Saturn, there can be real life implications or consequences via the words and the short messages that are out there. And if they're really the truth, if they're being distorted in some way, there's something coming in around that. And we'll talk about the events within recent history and their link to Jupiter and Gemini in a moment. But I just want to share here that 2024 here in the US is an election year. We had this transit in 2012, which was also an election year. And just when we think about Jupiter and Gemini, words and marketing, but it's just really important with Jupiter square Saturn that words are shared that are backed by substance. I just feel like the news cycle is already super active around election years. I just feel like with Jupiter being the planet of excess, there could just be an excess of news or information that's shared out there that could relate in real life consequences around the election or even around particular causes. So extra important to just be discerning. Don't believe something if you just watch one 30-second TikTok about it. Like, make sure to do your research. Not shading TikTok. I think it's an important vehicle and avenue to get information out there. But what I'm saying is that with Jupiter and Gemini, we can be very swayed by marketing, or we could be very swayed by little bits of information without understanding other nuances. And with Jupiter and Gemini, continue to work that muscle around, is there another perspective here? Is there something else that I can learn about this issue? So just something important to bear in mind. But overall, with Jupiter square Saturn, there can also be certain themes around education. There can be certain themes around travel limitations. There could definitely be a crisis of faith energy that we feel, because like I said, Jupiter is the energy around having faith and optimism, and things might feel a little bleak during this time. Sometimes this could be linked to challenging times within the economy, having Jupiter and Saturn converse in this way. It can be linked with this energy of just like, what's the point? Like, Jupiter to a certain degree is like our morale, it's our optimism. And with Jupiter squaring a Jupiter ruled sign, there could be an energy around what's the point, what's there to believe in. And that's where you really need to work the muscle of faith, like working the muscle around what helps you return back to your own big picture view. I just want to say, if you feel a little pessimistic around these times, August, December, as well as later in 2025, know that this too shall pass. And also, I just feel like with the energy of Jupiter, Gemini squaring Saturn and Pisces, there could also be certain conflicts around certain religious institutions or even colleges, as I highlighted, universities, but definitely like cults or religious leaders or things of that nature. There could definitely be some questions being asked during this time, and some even consequences around that. I also just want to share, this energy is going to bring us back into alignment if we have been in excess in any habits, overspending, gambling, indulging too much. Saturn and Pisces has been making us really look at our escapism, and this transit could absolutely bring some real life consequences to that behavior, making it very apparent. Like, Saturn is absolutely like reality check energy. Like, Jupiter is operating around expansive and excess, and if this feels good, it'll continue feeling good. But the energy of Saturn is like, slow your roll. And that could show up on a spiritual level, just feeling spiritually drained. It could show up on a physical level, on a mental level, on a life level, on a financial level. Like I said, our words have consequences. Sometimes even our faith has consequences. Hence why I pulled in those themes around, cults or religious institutions, starting to ask some questions. But overall, I do want to share that Jupiter will sextile the North Node come July, and it will sextile Chiron come October, November, and then May of 2025. So with Jupiter making sextiles to these Aries placements, there is an energy around empowering beginner's mind. It's okay to be a student at something. That's what I want to say. Like with Jupiter and Gemini, it's good to ask questions. It's good to be curious. It's good to be open. I'm just saying there's consequences to communication if we present ourselves like we know it all, right? That's where those consequences of Saturn can be coming in. But with the energy of Jupiter and Gemini sextiling these Aries placements, there's this energy around being open to be bad at something, being open for the messy first draft, craft, being open to take pottery class, even if the first couple of times your creations look just like lumps. It's around being open to sharing your story, even if there's parts of it that make you feel vulnerable, right? With the sextile to Chiron. The human condition is messy and we don't have it all figured out. And I think the energy of Jupiter and Gemini is being open around, hey, I don't know, I don't have it all figured out. I'm learning as I go. And, sharing that as you go and sharing your story as you go can be something empowering during this time. Because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's the energy of initiative, and Gemini is around the eternal student. So it's not feeling like we have to have it all figured out. It's not living in ego or feeling like we have to be a master in something. Like, you can share as you go. So long as your words aren't creating harm or perpetuating misinformation, it can be something very supportive. Let's say you want to start a podcast about your journey of healing, like sharing as you go. You never know how your words can be a beacon of light and hope for other people who are in a similar position. Like, that's where I feel like Jupiter and Gemini is going to be beautiful, is that there's just this movement, and I see this also with Saturn and Pisces, where we're decrystallizing the ideal. There's definitely this move towards being relatable, sharing the good and the bad, sharing the messiness of the human experience, being open to admit I'm still learning as I go, and being able to empower or inspire from that place. I just feel like there's a real nudge towards that with Jupiter sextile to Chiron in Aries, emboldening the messiness, emboldening the lessons that are embedded within our daily practical reality, right? Like I said, we don't have to go away to a faraway land and go to university halls in order to learn real lessons, to have real experiences, and to be able to share as we go. You never know how your perspective can be healing for other people. Just think about your comfort creators, like people on YouTube that you watch or podcasters that you listen to who have been a beacon, who have been a lighthouse for you when you've been going through something challenging. There could be an opportunity for you to do that, whether it's social media, whether it's mentoring someone. Just as other people's perspectives and sharing of their story can be healing for you, I equally want to let you know that your story could be healing or empowering for other people's perspectives as well. Like, I just think of this particular chapter of my life where I was obsessed with astrology. I mean, I still am, but I've definitely shifted my relationship to it. But I just think of the nights that I would stay up until 3 or 4 a.m. listening to Astrolotta videos and Alyssa Sharp. Like, I was obsessed. I was just consuming everything that was on their channel because I was going through it. Okay, I was going through it, and for some reason, their voices, their presence, their sharing of social media, it just was a lighthouse for me. It just gave me a little bit of hope around what it was that I was moving through. And to me, that's what inspired me to start showing up on the internet, was around if someone could find my videos and feel a little bit of hope, then that's worth it. That's worth my time and energy. If I could reach someone who was in as dark of a place as I was when I was obsessively consuming content on the internet, looking for any bit of relief, and my words or perspective or knowledge could help them feel more seen, inspire them, give them hope, that's worth it. Like, with the energy of Jupiter and Gemini, there is an energy around empowering connection. We are here to connect. And we can learn from one another's experiences. But that happens when we step out of ego, stepping out of this energy around, I know it all, and these are my beliefs, and I'm never going to challenge them, around being willing to, drop the defenses, allow our heart to crack open, allow ourselves to be relatable, share what's moving through us, share information that has been helpful for us. It just feels like there's a nudge towards that with Jupiter and Gemini. So one of the best ways that we can figure out what Jupiter and Gemini will have in store within the years 2024 and 2025 is to reflect on the last times that Jupiter transited this sector of the sky and to review what themes, trends, developments were alive within the collective as well as individually during that time. So as I share these timelines, definitely share your thoughts just as I share the dates. Of course, I've pulled some notable events and trends that seem tied with the Jupiter and Gemini themes, but of course, let me know what you remember about these times and equally reflect what was alive within your experience experience during these dates and during these times. So the last time that Jupiter was transiting Gemini was June 2012 to June 2013. Now the time before that was June 2000 to June 2001. So what was alive within your universe? Where were you growing? Where were you expanding? What were you communicating? Some of those themes may be potentially repeated. Of course, our story is ever evolving. It's not that you're going to go back in time to that exact era of your life, but you may find that some of those themes are amplified, that story is added onto, or just similar life themes are present during this time. And of course, it'll continue going back. Jupiter cycles are around 12 years. So you can think 12 years before 2000, 12 years before that point, 12 years before that point, in order to glean some additional data. So a couple of things that come to the surface for me when I revisit these times, and again, these observations are by no means exhaustive. I'm very curious in having a discourse with you all around what you noted around these times, but some of the observations that I found particularly interesting. So I feel when we talk about 2000 to 2001, this does feel like a time where cell phones were beginning to become more popular or more commonplace. We have to keep in mind, Jupiter in Gemini expands communication of all sorts. Now keep in mind, the cell phones we were rocking with were likely of this variety and likely just had snake on them. But nevertheless, this does feel to be a significant time of being more connected, of being able to connect even if you were away from the home phone, a development in regards to that. And at this time, internet by no means was in every single household, but it was absolutely picking up steam. And there's a couple of interesting notes and events that did come to being during this time. So the first being is that LimeWire was launched during this time. And when we talk about the expansive energy of Jupiter and in Gemini, the expansion of files and data and streaming, this is a significant development. Again, this time also brought through the ethics of being able to share, keep in mind Gemini is around connecting and sharing, in this case music, around being able to share information, as this was also the time that Metallica sued Napster, a similar service for the illegal or the unethical distribution of Metallica's music. So while it was an expansive time for being able to share and connect files, music, what have you, there was also certain conversations about the ethics of that and the law around being able to share and transmit information so frequently. And it's interesting because when we jump ahead in time to the next time it passed, we see the introduction of iTunes and we see the introduction of the iPod. So it was almost like a continuation of the music streaming discourse in ways that we can make it more ethical. So I'm curious if Jupiter and Gemini will bring certain developments as it relates to music streaming, music rights, downloading music. I'm definitely paying attention to that because there does feel to be a continuing story of that. On a random note, I don't know if this is because Jupiter and Gemini, we could go down rabbit holes, but I was having a really fun time researching for this video, and turns out that 2000, 2001 was the time that Heinz had these purple and green ketchups, and hear me out. And hear me out on this note, because you might be like, Haley Comet, what do these purple and green ketchups have to do with Jupiter and Gemini? All I want to say is look out for viral marketing tactics during this time, because this is pretty silly. Why do we need purple and green ketchup? We don't. But this is marked in my brain. Like, it was sealed in my brain. And I feel like we see companies do this every so often where it's not necessarily them being serious. Keep in mind, Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the trickster. It's not necessarily them being serious, but alas, it gets people talking. Like with Jupiter and Gemini, I just feel like the attention economy is going to be extra important, and people might go to some extreme or bizarre stunts in order to get their companies talked about. I mean, who knows? I'm not on Heinz's marketing department. Maybe that was a genuine product that they were launching. But to me, I just feel like it was like a weird thing, like let's get the people talking. So we could also observe that when Jupiter enters Gemini 2024 and 2025. Like I said, be discerning around marketing and things of that nature. Or sometimes with Jupiter and Gemini, it could be like all press is good press, and however it is that you get attention is a good thing. Again, this could be woven within marketing, within social media creators. Definitely with Jupiter and Gemini, we can expect some big viral moments, and they might be random, they might be bizarre. And to me, when I was revisiting that time period, the purple and green ketchup felt like a representation of that. I also want to highlight something that felt notable within my research is that within 2012 to 2013, it was a significant time, at least here in the US, around momentum beginning around same-sex marriage. So Maine, Maryland, and Washington had legalized same-sex marriage, and then the Supreme Court had agreed with their ability to do so. And then I believe US voters in Minnesota had rejected an appeal to ban same-sex marriage. So it did feel like a significant time around expanding tradition and expanding legality. Like, it's important to highlight because I know we typically think of Saturn as the planet of law and order. It is, but Jupiter also has to do with legality. And I think a benefit of Jupiter being in detriment is that sometimes these beliefs around this is how things should be. Sometimes with Jupiter in its detriment of Gemini, we're questioning these long-held beliefs. And within the US, like questioning these long-held beliefs around who should be allowed to legally get married. So it was interesting seeing just that being a time of momentum around gay marriage. And then going back to 2000 to 2001, the first gay kiss was televised on Primetime Network. It was a kiss on the show Dawson's Creek. That was in 2000, 2001. So it was just interesting to see that momentum around same-sex marriage continue to build during Jupiter and Gemini, just something that I noted when I was going through these dates. I also want to highlight the development of social media during this time. So going back to 2000 to 2001, like I said, not everybody was on the internet, but there was some movement, certainly. Habbo was launched during this time. 6degrees.com was shut down. 6 degrees, at least concept-wise, was this energy of connection. Again, it did not particularly take off. It's kind of interesting looking at Jupiter and Gemini because there certainly were some duds. It's like Jupiter and Gemini, things that were launched during this time or certain things that were shuttered during this time. Like Jupiter and Gemini, you know, sometimes it could be this energy around being spread too thin or trying to do all of these things. It doesn't necessarily give staying power. I just want to make that clear, which certainly was not the case for 6degrees.com, but the roots of it, the concept of it was reflected in MySpace, which was obviously more successful a couple of years later, but it was just interesting to see that that was being shut down while Jupiter was transiting Gemini. Now, going to 2012 to 2013, there is obviously a lot of building around social media. For me, I remember this was the time that I got an Instagram. This was the time that Facebook actually bought Instagram. Facebook went public during this time. So again, we see significant growth around social media sites, typically with Jupiter and Gemini. And with that comes a downside because I found this handy infographic. I'll make sure to link my sources below. Spam rose 35%. Again, now that we're so connected, now it's like there's ways for people to, you know, make bot accounts and try to spam. Like I said, Jupiter and Gemini is a lot of messages, and there's so much of the internet that's just fluff or spam or fake accounts, and I definitely think we can note that with Jupiter transiting Gemini in 2024, 2025, increasing it even more so because I feel like the internet's already littered with that, but I feel like Jupiter just expands what it goes through. So with Jupiter and Gemini, a lot more messages, a lot more connectivity, but with that connectivity definitely comes a downside. I also found it intriguing in that infographic that this marked a time in which YouTube was reaching more people than cable TV. Again, with Jupiter and Gemini, now we have the ability to connect into all sorts of niche topics, connect to all sorts of people, and traditional media models are being challenged. And that's important to bear in mind, especially with this year's Jupiter and Gemini square Saturn. We might see some pushback of connectivity. Again, some attempt for control over what information is being out there. Definitely look out for that. And other developments around social media. University of Florida created the first masters in social media during this time, starting to recognize that this is a legitimate study. It's a legitimate vehicle for business. 38% of Super Bowl ads had hashtags, just showing how woven the social experience is now to the traditional media experience, as well as just how pervasive social media is getting. Like I said, it's kind of intriguing just looking at the duds. Around these times, as I highlighted, this saw the introduction of iTunes, it saw the introduction of the iPod, which definitely don't have the same place in this streaming age. I know there are some outliers, but that definitely was not something that necessarily had staying power. Interestingly, I also found it intriguing that in 2012, 2013, Google Plus was the second most popular social media site. I mean, talk about a dud. I don't know anybody who's still on Google Plus or who used Google Plus. So we could see new social media sites being introduced, but I don't necessarily think every single one will have staying power. Speaking of things that didn't have staying power, this was also the time that Twitter launched Vine, which is now defunct. But I think the concept of Vine is very, very Jupiter and Gemini, because it's small little bits of information. Like I said, with Jupiter and Gemini, it's an attention economy, and all of us have very, very short attention spans, and that's going to increase during Jupiter and Gemini. So just to a personal level, when you're contemplating your marketing and your communication, if you do anything online, it's like shorter is going to be better. Again, I know it's challenging because it's hard to add all the nuance necessary, but what I will say is that the concept of Vine, it was just short little clips. It does feel very Jupiter and Gemini-esque. Of course, Vine in some ways did kind of pave the way for TikTok, but as you may be aware, here in the US, TikTok is currently being challenged, and I'm curious how that story is going to continue to unfold with Jupiter and Gemini squaring Saturn in Pisces. Like I said, there's going to be weird viral things, and that's always the case. I just feel like with Jupiter and Gemini, some of the news is going to be bizarre. Some of it's going to spread like wildfire. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I just found it intriguing that last time Jupiter and Gemini saw the Harlem Shake challenge, like I feel like on social media there used to be all these challenges, right? I don't know. I feel like Jupiter and Gemini might see some silly challenges and dances and things of that nature this round. So again, this is by no means exhaustive of everything that occurred in 2000, 2001, 2012, 2013, and the last times Jupiter was in Gemini. I just wanted to pull from more recent times to really clue into these themes and how they can continue to build, because I just feel like with Jupiter and Gemini trining Pluto and Aquarius, it's about the future, it's about technology, it's about innovating how it is that we communicate. So those just felt like the most relevant to pull from, but by no means this is exhaustive. I would love to hear your thoughts, your insights when you reflect on these times. Were these times significant within your journey? What was alive within your experience? Elements of that may be repeated with Jupiter revisiting the sector. So now that we've set you up with what we can expect societally as well as collectively, let's go ahead and support you with what you can expect individually. So you might be saying, Haley, Comet, this all sounds well and good, but where in my world can I experience more communication, more curiosity, more connection due to Jupiter and Gemini's influence? I'm so glad you asked. So I would recommend listening to your rising sign reading and your sun sign reading. So all timestamps are available below, and you'll want to listen to both. The reason I recommend this is because your rising sign, that will be the most accurate. That is where Jupiter is transiting within your chart. I recommend sun sign as well, as I do use solar houses, which is a technique within astrology in which we pull the sun to the first house and set up the houses accordingly. So your rising sign will likely be the most accurate transmission, but I would additionally listen to your sun sign, as there can be other nuances and opportunities awaiting for you there. Now, that strategy will align perfectly for you if you are newer to astrology or you utilize whole sign house system. You're all good to go. Listen to those two readings and enjoy your reading. If you're familiar with my content, you may know that I utilize Placidus house system, and this gets a little bit more tricky to figure out what exact reading you should listen to, but I'll guide you through step by step using Miss Interplanet Janet's chart here. So what you'll do is you'll want to look at your chart, and you'll want to find the Gemini glyph. It looks like this. It's yellow in astro.com, and so you'll see line to line. This is the Gemini sector of the sky, and this may expand from 1 to 2 or even 3 houses. Here it looks like pieces of pizza. You can see which house is which when you go to the inner part of the piece of pizza and you see little numbers. So for example, Miss Interplanet Janet, we see that Gemini glyph expands over her second house and her third house. So I would listen to both the second house reading as well as the third house reading to see where she can expect expansion within the next year. Now you'll want to listen to that reading or even those readings, whichever houses that Gemini glyph expands through, and then you'll just want to find your sun sign and advance to that timestamp. So now that we know which readings to listen to, let's go ahead and take it into our Jupiter and Gemini all signs forecast. So if Jupiter and Gemini will transit your first house, you may potentially be a Gemini ascendant, you may be a Gemini sun, or you may just have Gemini somewhat within your first house. Either way, this is your reading. And may I say, it's a good time to be a Gemini. It is a good time to be a Gemini. And listen, we have to be realistic about Jupiter and its detriment. It's not the most pleased, okay? So I'm not saying that you are going to get a $3 million check and meet your soulmate and become a movie star and everything in your life is going to increase tenfold. Hey, maybe. But the energy of Jupiter does give you more opportunity and more ease around bringing the growth that you are craving to you. I do feel like with Jupiter transiting here, it's important to be seen. From a house perspective, Jupiter was most likely, again, in houses or solar houses. Jupiter has been transiting the 12th house. So you could be coming out of a hermit era. You could have been doing a lot of things in secret, okay? You know, it's not uncommon when Jupiter's transiting the 12th house to have a secret love affair, okay? Jupiter and a Venusian sign in the 12th house, listen, not calling you out. All I'm saying, sometimes there's things that we're keeping secret, whether it's like, you know, a situationship, or maybe you were just like in a more spiritual hermit phase of your life. And then with Jupiter now in the first house, you are really wanting to step into your visibility. You are really wanting to live a life that is in integrity with yourself. Because maybe if those secret themes do resonate in your case, there is a lot that you give up when you have to keep certain elements of your life private. And I just feel that you guys are stepping in this energy of freedom around knowing who it is that you are, moving in a direction that makes you feel expansive and not really caring what other people have to say about it. Like Jupiter and Gemini, I'll be totally forthright, this can be a more gossipy energy and you are going to be in the spotlight. You're going to be more visible. So again, you'll want to be aligned with your integrity if you're worried about what people will say. But with Jupiter and Gemini, you're really stepping into your wholeness. So again, some of you could have closed out a cycle. Maybe it wasn't even something secret. Maybe it was just something that you were healing from, something that you let go of. And now it's like you're viewing the world through the lens of possibility. And that's going to be important. Just in case you did leave something behind that was kind of heartbreaking or devastating, or a certain cycle that you released, it's really important for you to look out at the world like you are a painter in front of a blank canvas, to look out at the world through the lens of possibility. Like when we are driving a car, we don't look at the rear view mirror to drive. We know it's behind us. We look ahead of us. And I just keep being shown that that's going to be important for you within the next year. Because again, even when Jupiter is in our sign, it doesn't mean that we are immune to difficulties. We have to keep in mind Saturn's still in Pisces, okay? And that will likely square your Gemini placements. You'll want to get caught up on that video if you have not, to get dialed into what that story is. So it's not to say that everything will be easy peasy, but it's really important during this time to focus on what's ahead of you. Like I'm just being shown this energy around, it's important to just move forward, and allow yourself to be optimistic and excited by possibility around what could be. Because Jupiter transiting the first, sometimes it could be a time in which we're wanting to be more free. Like I said, you could be freeing yourself from something that was like secret or a cycle of healing or something of that nature. You could even, we have to bear in mind that Jupiter is your descendant ruler. So you could have even freed yourself from a relationship that was not aligned. Now, some of you could get in a relationship that is aligned, but it's very important that it makes you feel free, that it's not restrictive. Like anything in your life that feels restrictive, this might be a time in which you are feeling inclined to expand away from responsibilities, from connections that no longer feel aligned with who it is that you are. You're really in this process around wanting to find yourself and create yourself. And you likely have Gemini placements, or you have Gemini somewhat ruling your first house. So it's important for you to be curious, not only about life, but also about yourself. What is it that I like? What is the direction that I want to move in? I do want to say that with the excessive sides of Jupiter, sometimes this can be a market time where we are being a little bit more excessive, excessively spending, excessively eating, excessively drinking, but it really stems from this energy of optimism. Like you're wanting to enjoy your life, you're wanting to get out there, you're wanting to socialize, you're wanting to be seen. Yeah, like I'm just feeling this energy around. Some of you could have just kind of been hermiting. Now it's an energy around, you know, life's for the living. I'm never going to be, whatever age you are, you're never going to be as young as you are right now. Like if you've been waiting to live, Jupiter and Gemini is your invitation to go out and live. Remember, you are the writer of your book. And again, it's not to say that every certain experience will be an automatic match, but just use it as data. Use it as an opportunity to get closer to yourself and figure yourself out more. Some of you might be feeling more confident about your physical body. You might be in a curious space around your aesthetic, around how it is that you want to be seen. Some of you could even be enrolling in classes. Jupiter is also your midheaven ruler, if we consider it from a traditional rulership standpoint. So you could even be investing in classes in order to advance your career. You could be stepping into leadership. you really are getting comfortable around not everybody liking you. You know, not to be corny, but there's something coming in around love me or hate me, at least you're talking about me. There's something like that. Like some of you might need to, especially if you're online in public in any certain way, like some of you are being asked to continue shining, even if there's like haters or people judging you within the public eye. Again, at least they're talking. Jupiter and Gemini in many ways is about, you know, currency being something that is attention. And when people are giving you attention, whether it's positive or negative, they're still giving you attention. And especially with Jupiter trining Pluto come June 2024, that attention can be alchemized. It can be transformed. And again, some of you, your boss could be someone who's putting a lot of pressure on you or kind of like being a hater. Or like I said, if you're in the public eye at all, it's not that people are hating you. I just feel like there can be an energy around being scrutinized and judged and even nitpicked. And with the energy of Jupiter and Gemini, so long as you're in integrity with yourself, like really just see it as an opportunity to continue to alchemize, to continue to be seen, to get comfortable with people talking about you. Like that doesn't say anything about you. And like I said, you might be getting more comfortable around being seen, okay? No excuses. Start that social media, start that podcast, start that YouTube channel, okay? No excuses. This is the time, okay? Pinky promise me. Pinky promise me right now, it's a very optimal time to get the word out there about who it is that you are and the message that you have to share at this time. Again, it won't come without hard work with the square to Saturn within the 10th house, but there's just this new cycle beginning, and it's one that feels expansive, it feels freeing, it feels a little bit more confident. I just see this energy where you could be more open to connections. You could even be making connections that could help you in work in some way. You could be deepening business partnerships. You could be deepening a romantic relationship again, but there's a strong nudge towards growth. I want to move forward. I want to expand. Like you could find something that feels so terrifying to you right now is being in the exact same place like 5 years from now. Like you're really wanting to grow. You're wanting to move forward with a sense of meaning, with a sense of openness, with a sense of being invigorated by possibility. So the biggest thing, look out at the world through your Jupiter goggles. Look out at the world and look at yourself through the lens of how can I grow and evolve forward? How can I be open to learning about new sides of myself? How can I open myself up to new conversations and new connections and new topics that can help me move into this new era? Claim growth, it's all yours for this upcoming year. If Jupiter and Gemini will transit your second house, you may potentially be a Taurus ascendant, you may be a Taurus sun, or you may just have Gemini in your second house. Whichever category you fall in, this is your reading. And I have one word for you. Cha-ching. This can be a very abundant time as it relates to your resources and your money. Just a quick aside before we get into your reading. I remember the day that Jupiter entered my second house. I'm not kidding. It was like clockwork. I got a raise at my 9 to 5. I was like, okay. Astrology is really astrologying right now. And I know if you have Taurus placements, you are about getting that back. So this can be a very abundant time. I do need to level with you and say that Jupiter is in its detriment in the sign Gemini. So sometimes these blessings may take some effort on our part. They could be a little bit more muted or understated. What I want to say, how you can maximize this, is do look for opportunities, how you can expand your finances. With Jupiter and Gemini, this may be an incredibly aligned time to take classes or look into education advancement opportunities in order to make more money. If you are a business owner with Jupiter and Gemini, this may be an opportune time to invest in marketing or prioritize your social media, your marketing, your web presence. Any sort of word of mouth can lead to more gain during this time. Leveraging word of mouth, leveraging marketing, leveraging social media can all be quite lucrative opportunities throughout this next year. I also want to say if you just have one way that you make money, with Jupiter and Gemini, this may be a time to add an additional income stream. Keep in mind, Gemini is the twins, okay? It's 2. So you could really grow your wealth by contemplating other skills that you might want to leverage or a side hustle of some sort to really maximize this transit. Like, this is your 8th house lord, so it could even be just random money that comes to you, passive income, grant scholarships, what have you. But definitely a time to get after that bag, okay? And the downside of Jupiter is that Jupiter expands money coming in, which we like, but expands money going out. And so this is a really important time to be mindful of lifestyle creep. around maybe you went through some time where you were just trying to keep your head above water, right? And you get this raise and you're like, okay, now I'll finally be able to get ahead. But it's like now it feels like your lifestyle hasn't changed. You're like, where did that extra money go? And keep in mind, we're living in a really weird economy. So I don't want you to hold on to any feelings of guilt or resentment around where my resources going. But what I would say is just be conscious how this shows up. Again, some of you could experience a raise where now all your needs are met. Maybe you've already been in an abundant place and now there's a raise where there's even more finances. Whatever the income level you are at, just be mindful of lifestyle creep because it's real. And no matter where it is that you are, there will always be a new range of possessions, a new home, a new neighborhood. There will always be something that's just out of your reach. And that happens regardless of how much money you're bringing in. There's always something else, a bigger house, a more expensive bag, a remodel. Like there's always something. Our desires being satiated last for a millisecond before it's like, oh, now that I can meet these needs, now I want that, now I want that. And I know I'm talking to a lot of Taurus placements and, you know, love you all. You guys have great taste, but let's just say it. You guys are a little bougie. And so with Jupiter transiting the second house, you just want to be mindful because it definitely can make us a time that we're more spendy. And it's important to highlight that when we talk about Jupiter, it is a very optimistic energy. And with Jupiter in Gemini, you may feel mentally more optimistic, like you're spending it like it'll come back tenfold. And listen, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I would just be mindful, especially during those months, August and December, and then next year in 2025 as well, when Jupiter squares Saturn, because that could be a time in which any sort of excessive spending, you have to hit the brakes on it. And it's helpful to be optimistic around finances, like even doing any sort of mindset work around money could be helpful during this time, but it's important to moderate that optimism. It's important to remain grounded, remain logical with the energy of Gemini, keep an eye on the data, the money coming in, the money going out, as well as really contemplate what it is that you are investing in and if you value what it is that you're investing in. Because outside of finances, second house is also values. So with Jupiter and Gemini, you might be finding that you're more inclined to like want to spend money on the things that do add to your life, that you do value. Like for some of you, this could be, spending more money on books, spending more money on classes, things that do benefit your life. It could be a time in which you're less interested on spending money, particularly in order to fit in. Keep in mind that Jupiter-Saturn square, I was talking about, Saturn's in your 11th house. So you're less apt to spend money in order to keep up with your friends or project a certain lifestyle. You're really wanting your money to go towards what it is that you value out of this experience, what's going to enhance your mind, what's going to enhance your skill set and your brain. Now, Jupiter in Gemini can also be supportive as it relates to your self-esteem. When it comes to Jupiter transiting here, some of you might be doing the work around your mind to genuinely want to support yourself and to understand how it is that you have talked down or not seen your own value. I'm quite vocal about this within Magic Monday if you watch my weekly horoscope series, but this world so wants you to undervalue yourself. Like lots of people benefit when you undervalue yourself, whether that is your labor, whether that is your energy that you bring into other people's lives, whether that's your words, your ideas, okay? And I just see this energy with Jupiter and Gemini in the second house. This can be a time of really seeing the value in your perspective, seeing the value in who it is that you are, seeing the value in your words. If some of you have been shy around not wanting to post or to share, you're seeing the value in your story. And some of you could even be making money via sharing your story or writing more or podcasting or something of that nature. So to maximize the luck that's coming your way, be intentional around finding ways to grow your finances, invest your finances strategically. Some of you may sell something that's adding to more abundance, but like I said, whether it's more money coming in or a significant sale, give your dollar a job. Okay, give every dollar a job. My mentor Denise always tells me that. She says, Haley, give your dollars a job. Like with Gemini, it asks for clarity, really revisiting the data, the logic. It's not saying to spend all your money. It's like, give it a job. I'm investing this. I'm budgeting this towards this class that I want to take. Because oftentimes when we go into having money, especially if we've gone through a time where we haven't had money, sometimes we can just let it kind of like leak out and things that we don't even value. Like think about, lottery winners, right? A lot of times it's like, I don't know what to do. I'm going to buy a boat. It's like flailing, right? Especially if energetically we're not used to holding a lot of money. We have to kind of get our mindset right, and I feel that strongly for you all with Jupiter and Gemini. Get your mindset right around seeing yourself as someone who is abundant, okay? And abundance doesn't mean spending. Start to see abundance as something where it's like, I'm saving, I have enough, I'm investing, my money is making me money. I think a lot of times we get in our own way around mindset work because we think, I'm abundant, so I should go to the mall and spend, $5,000. True abundance is when you just feel like your needs are met, right? Your money is making you money. You can sit back, because with this transit, if you have been in cycles of overspending, Jupiter might ask you to look at that and look at the mindset around that. And again, use data, analyze, what is my money going to? How can I give my dollar a job around I'm investing this, I'm budgeting this? If you aren't sure how to manage money, I would definitely advise working with an advisor or working with someone who can help you grow and accumulate your wealth. And really, when we talk about Jupiter in the second house, because you are worthy of this, okay? You are worthy to feel abundant. You are worthy to feel that your needs are taken care of. You are worthy to not feel stressed about money. Jupiter and Gemini can be overthinking energy. So maybe the mental pattern that you have around money aren't around overspending. Maybe it's like a lot of overthinking, never truly feeling abundant no matter how much money you're making because you're fearful around, what if this happens? What if this happens? Like, allow this Jupiter and Gemini energy to really expand your relationship around finances and to expand your relationship around your own worthiness. If Jupiter and Gemini will transit the third house of your astrological natal chart, this message is for you. You may potentially be an Aries rising, you may be an Aries sun, or you just have Gemini within the third house in either houses or solar houses. Whichever in those categories you fall in, this message is for you. And the emphasis for you and the opportunity for you to grow, evolve, and expand throughout the next year is really around communication. Firstly, to a personal level, I just want to say, with this energy of Jupiter in third house, you may feel more inclined that you're wanting to share more. You're not wanting to live in shame around your story, because some of you are doing some significant work on yourself. This obviously won't be for everybody, but you have Saturn transiting your 12th house. So some of you have really done the work around getting comfortable with your solitude, even battling bad habits. Some of you have gotten sober. Like, there's an energy where you're fighting your demons, or maybe some of you have been successful in fighting your demons. Like, you've really done the work on your inner landscape, or at least you're in the process of doing just that. And with Jupiter in the third house, you're letting go of shame around sharing your story and sharing your perspective. You could even be connecting with different people on this work that you're doing. It's important to note that houses or solar houses, you likely have North Node and Chiron within the first house. So you're realizing it's okay not to be okay, and there's value in our story, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not all put together. And so some of you, this might just show up within your interpersonal connections around you're wanting to share what it is that you're going through more so to friends. You're wanting to be more vocal and enhance communication with other people. There could have been a chapter of your journey that you were kind of like cloaked in certain shame or kind of like hermiting away. And it just feels like with Jupiter entering Gemini, you may feel inclined to want to share, to want to learn, to want to engage, particularly in a mental or verbal context with others. And so this could show up around being more vocal around your boundaries. This could show up around joining classes or joining groups where you're able to connect with other people, perhaps on more raw themes with the sextile to Chiron that won't align for everybody. You might find that you're more inclined to vocalize your boundaries or vocalize what it is that you need from others. But it's important to know that Jupiter, even though it's the great benefic, it does have a shadow side. And with Jupiter in Gemini, just know that your word is your wand. And you will have to be intentional around communicating with integrity. Like, your words could absolutely catch up to haunt you if you are engaging in a lot of gossip, especially if you don't want people to know something. Like, listen, Jupiter in Gemini, this is giving telephone. This is giving a cosmic game of telephone, and words and information spreading like wildfire. So you'll just want to be intentional around what it is that you're sharing. Jupiter definitely enhances communication, as well as just being intentional around listening to others as much as you are communicating yourself with this here. Some of you can experience improvements as it relates to a relationship with a sibling, as it relates to a relationship with a neighbor, with the energy of Jupiter transiting here. Some of you may get a new car. Some of you may get a new car. Or you may even be open to another form of transportation. We need to keep in mind, Gemini is about duality, it's about two. So maybe you have a car, but you're getting a scooter. Or something of that nature. There definitely can be an improvement as it relates to transportation. You could also find you're more open. Like third house is short-term journeys. Of course, Jupiter is your ninth house lord. So really there could be travel opportunities. It's like a time to be open to life. And you can find you're more social, you're more inclined to want to network, you're more inclined to want to connect, you're more inclined to want to learn. That's a huge part of this transit. I definitely see a lot of you could enroll in a significant class and learn a new skill. Gemini governs the hands, so maybe you're learning pottery or you're learning something with your hands. It would be helpful to have a hobby that keeps your hands busy because with Jupiter and Gemini, a downside of this is you're gonna have a lot of thoughts and you've got to moderate that overthinking, okay? Because with Gemini, it's like thoughts can just keep going and going and going and going and going and going into infinity. And I just want to share, just in case any of you are going through something and you're like me and you have a more obsessive or kind of like overthinking kind of mind, for me, something so helpful has been reading. I just think of reading as brain decoration, like, dear God, get me out of here, get me out of these thoughts, get me out of this rumination, get me out of this obsession. For me and like my healing journey, I've been leaning a lot on reading because that's the only activity for me that literally feels like a mental vacation. Like I still feel like I'm thinking while I'm watching TV or anything of that nature. Reading is the only thing where I literally transport into a different reality. And for me, that's been helpful for my mental health. So perhaps some of you are getting into reading or something else that's helpful for your brain. Like I said, there's an energy around releasing shame. So some of you could be going into therapy. Some of you could even be like involved in AA or like a group environment like that for the purpose of healing, since this is also your 12th house lord in traditional rulership. But I definitely see with Jupiter in the third house, you could be journaling, you could be processing. And the gift of this is, yes, it does expand thoughts, but some of you can find you're in a more optimistic mindset, or at least you're wanting to support yourself with the tools of what will genuinely support your mind, of what will genuinely help you move forward. Like for me, I've been leaning on books a lot because I'm like, other ways that my mind can be occupied right now is not genuinely conducive for growth and moving forward. And with Jupiter and Gemini here, this is also about social media. So maybe some of you are finding a more healthy relationship to social media. Definitely an aligned time to be posting, okay? You have no excuse. You have no excuse if you've been wanting to start a podcast, if you want to reboot a podcast or social media or a TikTok or a YouTube. There's lots of value in what it is that you have to share. I talked a lot about this within the collective forecast, and I'm just really feeling you need to listen to that part. So make sure to go back and listen to that piece around relatability and the value of being able to share our story, even if it's messy, you know, even if we're still figuring it out as we go. There's value in sharing your perspective. And luckily, I know I'm talking to a lot of Aries, so you may not relate to this next piece, but let go of this idea that you need to have it all figured out for you to start sharing. Okay, let that go. Jupiter and Gemini is expanding the eternal student. Now, like I said, your word is your wand. You need to ensure you're speaking with integrity and not perpetuating misinformation, but don't feel like you need to have healed to be able to share TikToks about your healing journey. Like, don't feel like you need to be perfect, because that will never arrive. The goalposts continually move. But I do see with Jupiter and Gemini, you're getting more comfortable with sharing your perspective. If you have a business, really aligned time to be investing in marketing, social media, your online presence overall. Some of you could be renovating your website of some sort, or just really contemplating, what do I want to share? How do I want to communicate who it is that I am? If you are a Pisces sun, a Pisces rising, or you have Gemini located in the 4th house of your astrological natal chart, this message is for you. And it's an important message for you, especially if you are a Pisces placement. That is because within traditional rulership, Pisces is governed by Jupiter. So what Jupiter is doing is of the utmost importance to you. And I just want to set expectations here. I know you guys have already been going through enough with Saturn and Pisces. I'm right there with you. Dear God, can this transit end? Jesus. But alas, I know it's been hard. And I just want to set expectations and just say that with Jupiter transiting a sign of detriment, sometimes there can be some challenging energies, particularly when it comes to your own sense of faith. Pisces as a sign, I know not all of you are Pisces, but Pisces as a sign operates on intuition. And with Jupiter and Gemini, it might be a really important time to be relying more so on logic. And also with Saturn most likely in your first, discipline. But pulling in the logic piece, It's important for you to be logical about your emotions. If you've been going through something, if someone's been mistreating you, or there's been a distressing situation taking place, with Jupiter in Gemini, you really have to pull that logical part of your side in. And I know it's so challenging, but I really want you to look at the facts. Look at the facts around how this person has treated you or how the situation has unfolded. Like, have conversations about it, write it out. Like, it's really hard being a Pisces because obviously there's like this energy around wanting to romanticize and fantasize and see the best in situations. But this is a time with your ruler, for most of you, transiting Gemini. This is a time that you really have to contemplate a different perspective and contemplate logic, or even get some other opinions on the matter, particularly if there have been something that you've been holding on to. And sometimes we break our own hearts through imagining or romanticizing how things could be. Like with Jupiter in Gemini, this may be an important transit for you to really look at the facts around a certain situation and really know that the truth can set you free. Because I don't mean to be pessimistic about this, okay? Like Jupiter in the fourth house, this could be freeing yourself from something that has been challenging emotionally. This could be setting the boundaries that are necessary for you to be able to genuinely heal and genuinely step into your worthiness and your value based on where Chiron and North Node is transiting throughout the majority of this transit. But when it comes to Jupiter in Gemini within the fourth house, this can be an energy around freeing yourself from things that have felt emotionally challenging. But with Jupiter in Gemini, you may need to rely on logic or even get into therapy or even just have conversations, release of shame around what it is that you're moving through in order to genuinely grow and genuinely be able to move forward. With Jupiter in Gemini, this may be an incredibly aligned time to read books, listen to podcasts, like I said, therapy, have conversations around how you can genuinely show up for yourself and show up for your emotional state. That'll help you to move forward. I just feel like there's going to be valuable content creators, books, classes that enter your space during this transit that give you the tools to be able to move forward. Because one thing I want to say with Jupiter and its detriment, it's not that it's a cursed time, okay? It's not that it's a bad time, but sometimes we do have to put a little bit more effort in order to reap those manifestations. And with Jupiter in Gemini, do the effort around learning, being open to information around how you can show up for yourself, how you can free yourself from toxic emotional cycles that you've been in order to make your inner landscape a more optimistic place to be. I just feel like there's information that can come into your periphery during this time that will help you move forward, because fourth house is the most sacred portion of the chart, but it's very foundational. And so a lot of your blessings are showing up around really getting your foundations right, around how it is that you are caring and keeping for yourself, how it is that you are nourishing yourself with the information, with the mental processes that are genuinely helping you to move forward. And part of that may be disrupting illusion, with Jupiter and Gemini being open to other people's perspectives in order for us to move forward in a more healthy emotional space. I also want to share that with this energy, fourth house is our home. Fourth house is our family. And so this can be a time of growing your family in some way. You could be healing your relationship with your family. If you've been in a no contact situation with people in your family, Jupiter and Gemini may be helpful in igniting conversations, though with the square to Saturn, not at the expense of your own happiness. I see some people could be reconnecting, reconciling with family members that you've lost touch with, but I see others, it might be a time in which you're protecting your peace. You're finding it's not conducive to allow people access into your world. But either way, with Jupiter and Gemini, whether it's your family of origin or the family that you're creating, this can be a more expansive, happy time at home. Some of you could absolutely be moving with Jupiter and Gemini, be open to leveraging word of mouth in order to find the right place. Like definitely leverage a realtor, I would say, or be open to put out there, hey, I'm looking for a home like this or land like this. Do you know anyone? Like you might find that a person or a connection brings your property to you. Also, I would additionally bring to the surface, some of you could get involved in the real estate market. You could buy property. You could expect more harmony potentially with roommates or better communication with those that you live with. You can experience a time of more domestic bliss, shall we say. For some of you, this is likely your midheaven ruler or your 10th house lord. So you could even get into real estate or get into property in some way. Some of you are really looking to make your home environment a refuge of your mind. Like you're looking to make it a sanctuary. You could be definitely like remodeling or redesigning in order for your brain to feel supported when you're at home. Like being able to come home just being able to like relax. Because with Saturn in the first house, a lot of you are stepping up to additional responsibilities. And with Jupiter in the fourth house, you're like, how when I'm home, I can really make this a restful, peaceful place to be where my mind can turn off, where I can rejuvenate my energy stores. That may be a focus. And some of you could have a child or your family could expand. You know, with Saturn in the first house, you're definitely leveling up in life. You're taking on new responsibilities, but it's like, when we take on new responsibilities, our self-care has to be just as deep. The more that you expand into new iterations of your business and of your career and of your family and of your responsibilities, the deeper you also have to go into your self-care and how it is that you show up and you nourish yourself. You know, some of you with Jupiter and Gemini within the fourth house, you may need to do some work around how it is that you are mentally processing your emotions. It's definitely a time to learn about strategies around how you can more effectively care and keep for your soul, because your soul is much too precious of a thing to ignore. And with Jupiter transiting fourth house, it's a time in which lots happening underneath the surface. You might find you're a little bit more inclined to keep certain things sacred. Lots happening underneath the surface. Yes, Jupiter in Gemini is chatty, but you might find you're more chatty with family or people who feel like family. You're keeping a lot closer to chest. You're being rigid about your boundaries, and I'm here cheerleading you on as you do that. If Jupiter in Gemini will transit the fifth house of your astrological natal chart, this message is for you. You may be an Aquarius ascendant, you may be an Aquarius sun, or you may just have Gemini located in the fifth house. Either way, this is shaping up to be a rather fun time for you. Keep in mind, Jupiter is transiting air signs, so it is benefiting the air signs if you do have Aquarius placements. And there is this energy and this prioritization around wanting to explore, wanting to have fun. I want to highlight that Pluto is in your sign if you're an Aquarius placement, or it might be in your first house via houses or solar houses. So it is a time around rebuilding. You may have had certain elements of your life fall away or asked to be reinvented in some way. And sometimes when something departs our life, or we're going through a grief around who it is that we used to be or what our life used to look like, it can be this energy around who am I? And with Jupiter and Gemini, it's around being open and excited to find out, being open to get curious around this experience and really contemplating what's fun for me, because fifth house is about hobbies. It's around self-expression. So with Jupiter here, you may find that you get into a new hobby. Gemini governs the hands, so potentially with your hands, you could find this is a very creative time if you are a creator, especially if you work with words, if you're a songwriter or a poet or something of that nature. This can be quite prolific in terms of your creativity and your creations. I also want to say this is a very flirty time. So if part of that rebirth energy was a certain relationship falling away, I do see there is this openness to dating and really wanting to flirt and communicate with all sorts of different people. And with Jupiter and Gemini, like really approach dating through this lens of curiosity or even fun around getting to know yourself through bouncing energy off other people or getting curious around different types that you haven't dated. Have fun with it. Get curious around it. Even if you go on a bad date, take the data and keep it moving. Jupiter and Gemini is quite flirty. Okay, some of you might up your flirting game. You might up your riz. And if you're in a committed partnership, I want to let you know that this could be a time to reinvigorate that kind of fun, flirty banter vibe within your connection. You know, some of you might enter a relationship by the end of this because it does expand, you know, the dating sector, but it's likely that a lot of the connections right now are really getting data around the sort of people that you want to connect with, that you have fun with. And I do want to say, be cautious if you do not want to conceive during this time, have a child. Sometimes Jupiter in the fifth house can bring that, potentially twins with Jupiter and Gemini. But if you have been wanting to conceive, this can be an incredibly aligned time to do so. Some of you may find during this time, there may be inner healing necessary during this time, especially looking at how your inner child could have shaped your own perspective, your own processing of the world, your own mental dialogue. For some of you, there can be some contemplation of that. If you have children and you guys have not been communicating, this can be a positive time around enhancing the communication that you do have with your children. If you work in the arts, this could be an incredible time of increasing word of mouth around your art or around your creativity. Definitely leverage social media in order to get the word out there. Some of you could have a viral moment around your art, around your music, around your poetry, whatever it is that you do during this time. And I do want to highlight, fifth house is about fun, and there is such thing as too much fun. This is such a beautiful time around getting curious around what gives me joy. How do I like to spend my time? What charges me up? Like, fifth house is the party house, and you could definitely find there's a desire during this transit to reconnect to the fun in life, reconnect with your inner child, reconnect with hobbies that remind you that life is for the living and for the enjoying, and to make your pleasure a priority. You know, a lot of your Aquarius placements, which typically has a more cerebral or detached view on life, which certainly Jupiter is an air sign, that is increasing that. But what I want to say, with Jupiter in the fifth house, you're allowing yourself to get excited. You're allowing yourself to have fun. You're not taking yourself so seriously. You know, for some of you, sometimes Pluto, your sign, brings an existentialism your way. Like, some of you could have literally navigated, you know, grief or loss of something that sharpened things into focus. Like I always say, if you can really deeply understand death, you can really grab hold of life and realize that every single day is a gift, and every single day you should make your own happiness and your own joy a priority. And if you don't know what that is, if you've lost touch with what makes you happy, Jupiter and Gemini is the time to get curious. It's time to try things. It's the time to express yourself, reconnect with who it is that you are. And it's not even that who it is that we are is this static entity. Like with Jupiter and Gemini, it's trying different things and finding out what feels good for you, because you are in a growth period with Pluto in the first house. But why I say that too much fun can be a downside is because Jupiter brings the spirit of excess to where it transits through. So some of you can gamble during this time. You can get caught up gambling or partying, or even just being quite hedonistic. You know, fifth house has to do with passion stuff, and with Jupiter and Gemini, you might have two partners. You can get caught up. Listen, Jupiter and Gemini, people talk, okay? So if you are being shady within your dating life, there is a likelihood during this time that, you know, people could talk and figure it out. So, you know, be honest, be forthright with people. It's not nice to be duplicitous, but have fun, you know, explore. So long as you are being intentional and integral with yourself as well as with others, there's really no harm here. I would just make sure to practice safety as it relates to having babies or anything else that sort of behavior could bring your way. But with Jupiter and Gemini, outside of that, if that's not where it is that you are at, no worries whatsoever. It could also be around just finding hobbies, taking classes, finding out what makes life worth living, because it is a gift. I know Pluto energy and having it in your sign can make things feel very dark and very intense. But with Jupiter and Gemini, there's a desire during this transit to reconnect with the lightheartedness of life. And like I said, some of you have to go back into your childhood in order to reconnect with your inner child, or even do some inner child healing with Jupiter sextiling Chiron, most likely in your third house, contemplating how your inner child is holding on to certain narratives or certain ways of viewing the world that are stemming from very wounded messaging or being internalized by a very wounded part of yourself. Like, some of you almost have to go back into the past, into your inner child, to kind of heal that to a certain degree in order to reinvigorate this lighthearted energy of life. And it's not that we're ever fully healed, right? It never like fully stops hurting what it is that we've gone through. But I do feel this energy of Jupiter and Gemini is like reconnecting with what you like to do when you were a child. And maybe if you felt like that was denied, like you didn't have the space to create and be lighthearted and carefree, Jupiter and Gemini is reclaiming that now. You deserve that youthful, curious spark, and Jupiter and Gemini is delivering that to you on a silver platter. So during this time, just really anchor in the knowledge. Life is meant to be fun. My life is meant to be enjoyed. This experience is a gift. And when it comes to fifth house, I just always think of this lust for life energy. And sometimes when we're moving through something, which not all of you, but I feel a lot of you are with Pluto in your sign, where things feel very intense, there's been a significant transformation taking place. Let Jupiter and Gemini be your catalyst to investigating and learning what invigorates that lust for life, what makes you feel excited to be alive, how it is that you like to express yourself, who it is that you are. Allow this transit to be a journey to getting closer to your own happiness, your own joy. So if Jupiter will transit your sixth house, this reading is for you. You may be a Capricorn sun, you may be a Capricorn rising, or you may just have Gemini within your sixth house. Either way, you are experiencing this expansiveness as it relates to your day-to-day. Listen, I know sixth house gets a lot of flack for being a cadent house and governing things that are a little boring, but hear me out. Where else would you want your blessings to be concentrated? Like, sixth house is how it is that you spend your seconds and your minutes and your hours. It's how it is that you do your laundry. It's how it is that you do your work tasks. Like, it's the mundane facets of our life. And you might be like, well, I want vacations and marriage and all of these big things, but life is mostly Mondays. Life is mostly how it is that you get the mail and when you do laundry and when you feed your cat. Like, life is made up of these little details. And with Jupiter transiting here, you may find that you start to enjoy the smaller attributes of your day-to-day more so. You could be more likely to be able to find the magic within the mundane. You could be able to apply a sense of meaning in what it is that you do, in the projects that you are working on, in how it is that you view your day-to-day. This can be an amazing time of committing to an exercise routine, particularly if it allows you to connect or socialize with other people. I see some of you could join, like, we'll say a Pilates studio, and you can make a workout friend, or you could even deepen a connection of yours when you guys decide to go to workout classes together, where it's like you're working out the body, but you're also creating time within your day-to-day to connect. Like with Jupiter and Gemini, there is an emphasis of that. So I see some of you could join a studio in which there is more communication, or some of you could be just prioritizing health and wellness overall. You could be researching more around it, studying more around the best ways to care and keep for your body. You could get more into nutrition. You could get more into fitness. There's definitely a deep desire to want to feel good. And with Jupiter and Gemini, you could go down many rabbit holes around the best ways to care for yourself. And that is a downside, I want to say, with Jupiter and Gemini. We could just go down so many rabbit holes around, should I do keto? Should I do this? That you start to feel foggy around health overall, around taking care of yourself. Spirit's showing within my mind's eye this time of my mom's life where she was just so burnt out just from like diet culture and just everyone saying something different in terms of how we show up for our body, that she actually went back to school. She enrolled in college to take a nutrition class because she was just so mystified. She's like, how should I be eating? Like, how should we show up for ourselves? So I do see some of you could go down a rabbit hole around that, whether it's improving your health or wanting to, beat a certain illness that you have been navigating through. With Jupiter and Gemini, you may go down some rabbit holes, but there could be knowledge that you find during this time that genuinely allows you to feel better within your day-to-day. On that note, this is also workplace. So if you are unsatisfied within your current vocation, this could absolutely be an opportunity in which you could get a new job, and word of mouth might bring you this opportunity. The network that you've built may bring you this opportunity. This may be an energy in which there's more gossip amongst your coworkers. Definitely being intentional with what it is that you choose to share with your coworkers, because that can absolutely come back to haunt you, especially with the Jupiter square. Okay, just being mindful of that. But with Jupiter and Gemini, you could also find that there's increased closeness when it comes to your coworkers, and there's an enjoyment of what it is that you're doing. Jupiter is your 12th house lord and your 3rd house lord, so there could be just a more healthy frame of mind that you're in at work. There can be a deep desire to want to be of service. Like, it could feel good to be of service. It could feel good to make a difference in other people's lives. And you might be saying, well, Haley, Comet, I'm a barista. I'm not like saving the world. But it's like, I typically see with Jupiter in 6th house, there's a renewed appreciation for what it is that we do contribute, how it is that we do serve other people, where it's like, yes, you're just making someone a latte, but that's part of their day-to-day routine. And when you smile at them, that's like one moment that this person feels less alone in this harsh experience. Like, do not undervalue the amount of beauty and meaning that you can assign to very small interactions. Because with Jupiter and Gemini, it's like, I just see some of you are just making the space and the time to connect, to communicate as part of your day-to-day. You're making it a priority, because I'm talking to a lot of Capricorns, and you all are typically the ones who shoulder a lot of burdens, and you don't like to tell people what's going on. You might be comfortable if other people come to you with their stuff. When it comes to your stuff, you have this energy around, gotta keep it all together, gotta portray to be, authoritative and like I have it all together all of the time. And I'm not saying you're necessarily going to be, showing up to work crying, but what I do see is you're taking time and space to share more, to be more intentional with how it is that you connect, whether this is to your employees, whether this is to your coworkers, even just bucketing time within your routine to connect with people, to plan more hangouts with your friends, could also be something that you observe during this time. And I see for a lot of you, you're making learning a priority within your routine. If it's not prioritizing connection or even social media in parts of your day-to-day or parts of your work, I see you're prioritizing learning. You could be setting aside time to read. You could be setting aside time to learn. You could be setting aside time to intentionally support your mind with ways to better yourself, like on every level, physical, emotional, spiritual. There typically is this desire to learn information around how it is that you can feel better or move in a pathway that is conducive for healing, can be a priority during this time. Look at your routine while Jupiter is transiting Gemini in the 6th house. See where it is that you can optimize. I'm not saying you have to get up at 5 a.m. and drink green juice and take cold showers and whatever, the health gurus say. But it is a time to get curious around how can I best show up for myself? How can I take the data of how I spend my seconds, my minutes, and my hours and be able to extract the big picture life that I'm building? Because Jupiter is the big nuances, 6th house is the small details. And so if it is important to you to learn, if it is important to you to take care of your body, if it is important to you to spiritually connect, is that reflected within your day-to-day? And equally, when we view this from the lens of wellness, observing, when I lie in bed and scroll on my phone for hours and then just eat a bar and rush to work, I observe my mental health, my physical health goes like this. Versus if I take time to get outside, get my morning light, call a friend before going to work, I notice my mental health and well-being shows like this. View it as data. It's not going into this guilt spiral. Listen, you guys are hard enough on yourselves. If you are Capricorn placement, it's not going into a guilt spiral around need to be perfect and optimized. It's just reviewing the data around, that's so interesting that my mood statistically tracks higher on days that I start my day like this or times that I end my day like this. Let me take that data and note it. Because if you're not happy with your routine, Jupiter in Gemini is a time to get curious, try new things, see how you can get closer to the healthiest self. And I mean that on every level: physical health, emotional health, spiritual health. If Jupiter in Gemini will transit the 7th house of your astrological natal chart, this message is for you. You may be a Sagittarius sun, you may be a Sagittarius rising, you may just have Gemini in your 7th house. Either way, luck is coming to you via your connections. With Jupiter transiting here, you got options. Okay, if you don't have options at the time of watching this, circle back with me in a couple of months and let me know how many options you have. Because what I want to say, with Jupiter in 7th house, there may be multiple people that want to date you, especially with Jupiter in Gemini. You may really have people in your space wanting to connect with you. And so if that's been something that you've been wanting to call in, this is a beneficial time. With Jupiter in Gemini, I'm not saying you have to commit right away. I know how Sagittarius placements are about their freedom. But with Jupiter in Gemini, it's definitely a time around you're getting curious around what it is that you want from a partner. You're dating more and you're really honoring the data around these sort of conversations feel good, or this sort of data from these people feels more in alignment with the directions that I want to go. And so let's say that you are completely aligned to this idea of a romantic relationship entering your life. Here's some thoughts to keep in mind. So firstly, with Jupiter transiting the sign of its detriment, sometimes we have to put a little oomph in there. These blessings, your soulmate is not just going to arrive on your door. I would definitely say with Jupiter transiting Gemini, put yourself out there. I know that's such corny dating advice, but seriously, closed mouths do not get fed. And I'm not saying you need to go on your sidewalk and have a sign saying that you're looking for, a 6'4" baddie or whatever. I'm saying this might be an aligned time to, be open to people setting you up, like be open to blind dates, be open to apps or online dating if that's your vibe. Join classes where you could meet people who are like-minded, and also be open to date outside of your typical type. During this time, you could get some interesting data. I also want to say, again, without being duplicitous and without being shady, with Jupiter in Gemini, this might be a time that you are feeling more inclined to want to keep your options open. This does tend to be a time that we are prioritizing freedom, and keep in mind this is your 1st house lord. This is most likely a ruling planet, so you might find that you are not wanting to put your eggs all in one basket, right? You're keeping it light, you're keeping it flirty until the relationship progresses to that point. But with that being said, and this is something we do not talk about enough in terms of Jupiter transiting the 7th house, because a lot of times when we tune into Jupiter, we just think of expansion and luck and blessings and opportunity. And absolutely, a lot of you will be blessed with the people that you are bringing in during this time. But what I want to say is that it can make us very restless and freedom-seeking within connections. It makes you very aware, if you're in a partnership, on if you and your partner are growing together or if you are growing apart. Sometimes we can feel really restless when Jupiter's in the 7th house, around just wanting to do our own thing, just wanting to be free. You know, Jupiter tends to make us more optimistic. So you could be feeling more optimistic around what else is out there, around who else may want you, around who you may want to partner with. And so with Jupiter in 7th house, it's not unheard of for this actually to be a breakup energy. Again, no fear whatsoever. Usually the breakups during this time, it's like, yeah, it's sad, it's bittersweet, but like with Jupiter, there's this deep knowing around this is helping me set up for the next chapter of my life. Or maybe you're even having to be very logical around this decision. Now, if you're in a committed partnership and you're not feeling the energy around growing apart, this could be a very aligned time to go on a trip with your partner. Your partner could be going back to school, or there can be a certain emphasis around increasing the communication within your connection, can be an emphasis during this time. Especially with Saturn transiting the 4th house, there can be certain dialogues that you're engaging in around certain traditions that the two of you are maintaining from your respective family of origins. There could be certain conversations around your living situation, on if you two want to move. There can be certain dialogues that are happening that maybe are around real life stuff, right, with Saturn and Pisces in the 4th house, but again are allowing the two of you to move forward into a new direction. You are, if you are a Sagittarius placement, you are Jupiter ruled. And I want to be forthright with you. Jupiter doesn't like being in Gemini. Like, you are a sign that likes to move off faith. And Gemini likes to move off receipts and data. So with your ruler in Gemini, you may have to get logical around, who do I want to be with? Where does this connection feel aligned and where does it not? Like, you could be really needing to lean on logic in order to deduce whether this connection is for you. And again, that's not typically your MO. That's not typically how you move. But with Jupiter and Gemini, if something feels off, like, write down, where in this connection am I feeling uncomfortable? Where in this connection am I not feeling aligned? Like, it may be an important time to rely more so on logic and facts, and even getting a different perspective. I want to say, be open to ask people for advice. I know that's not necessarily what Sagittarius placements want to do. Listen, shadow-sided Sagittarius energy could be sometimes being a little bit of a know-it-all. Okay, I'm not coming for you, I'm just saying. But with Jupiter and Gemini, where the universe is blessing you is via people and also via other people's perspectives. So don't get so locked in your own way during this time. This is a time to be open around, what would you do in this situation? Or what do you think about the person that I'm dating? Like, going to trusted people within your world. The universe could be talking to you directly, using other people as a vehicle. So be open to ask for advice, be open to ask for input. Again, to thy own self be true. You're Jupiter ruled, nevertheless, you're going to move in the direction of your own arrow, but there can be other perspectives that you're not considering and that may show up within your connection. Now, even outside of advice, I just want to let you know, people are going to be what deliver your manifestations to you on a silver platter. So rather than manifesting the house, manifest or see within your mind's eye the realtor who's selling you the house. Rather than manifesting the, 7-figure business, manifest the target demographic that you want to reach. Like, your blessings are going to come to you via other people, which is why it's important with Jupiter and Gemini to spread the word around what it is that you want, what it is that you're calling in. Like, hey, do you know any art galleries that are looking for new artists? Like, a lot of your manifestations are going to come via your network or via people that you are connected to. So definitely with Jupiter and Gemini, nourish your networks, be open to connect, be open to socialize. Again, with Jupiter in its detriment, sometimes we do have to put in a little bit more effort in order to reap these manifestations. But with Jupiter in Gemini, this could definitely be an expansive time around people. Outside of even romantic partners, clients, you could find that the general public has more favorable impression of you now. You could find that you're more magnetic, you're more likable as it relates to one-to-one. Some of you are learning strategies around how you could more effectively communicate with others. Like I said, with Jupiter and Gemini, fortune favors the curious. So some of you are learning ways to be more persuasive, ways to be able to sell better, or what have you. So with Jupiter transiting here, be open to other people and be open to the blessings that the universe has in store that it's delivering your way via people. So if Jupiter and Gemini will transit the 8th house of your astrological natal chart, this message is for you. You may potentially be a Scorpio sun, you may be a Scorpio ascendant, or you may just have Gemini in your 8th house. Either way, you can expect some expansiveness as it relates to support that comes to you from others. So what I want to say is that this can be a time of accumulating wealth, but it may take education, learning, even working with an advisor in order to get you in that pathway of wealth. Like, keep in mind, with Jupiter and its detriment, it's not just going to Jupiter on its own. Like, we really have to be intentional around, investing in education or finding the right financial advisor in order to experience gain in this sector. So this definitely could be a time in which you and your spouse, if you have one, or just your overall assets, you could be really contemplating learning strategies around how can my money be making me money? And I also want to highlight that, let's say you're not so much focused on this from an accumulation standpoint. Let's say you're focused on this from a debt relief standpoint. Jupiter in the 8th house can absolutely be helpful for lowering or even nullifying your debt potentially. With Jupiter and Gemini, be open to ask for advice, work with advisors on ways that you can tackle your debt, pay down your debt. You can find that there is random support that's available to you, whether this is, scholarships, grants, debt relief. There could be just money that shows up for you. And that might be an important energy to go into this transit around, I attract money from everywhere. I attract money like I breathe. I earn more when I'm not working. Like, allow money to show up for you in some weird ways. Okay, I have some stories to tell from when Jupiter was transiting my 8th house. It was like bizarre. And even if it's just not random checks in the mail, it could be money that you would have spent and then somebody buys it for you, or discount. Like, you could just be feeling like the universe is just supporting you in really random ways. Some of you could be attracting like a donor who's going to help your art. I want to say that with Jupiter also being your 5th house ruler, most likely. So with this energy, an important time to be open to, help and receiving. Whether this is getting a manager, if you are creative of some sort, or this can be a time in which when you partner with somebody, you create more space to be able to grow your wealth and grow your finances. Definitely in time to realize that you're not just doing it on your own, and that could show up around partners that you're merging with, support that you're receiving, but also just co-creating with the universe, right? And with Jupiter and Gemini, like, really allow mantras, affirmations that continue to affirm how much support is available to you. I do want to highlight, a lot of you are Scorpios, so I'm going to get a little morbid. Can't help but get morbid when we're talking about the 8th house. But some of you may find that with Jupiter transiting here, there may be more of a focus on your legacy. You may be doing research around your will. You may even benefit from an inheritance of some sort. Again, no fear whatsoever. But a lot of times with Jupiter transiting this sector, there is this desire to want to go deep. Like, you can be really contemplating what is going to remain when I leave. And with Jupiter and Gemini, if you're a writer or something of that nature, you could craft something during this time that will outlive you. I also want to say, if you've created something passively, like you have created an ebook or course, you could definitely experience gain in revenue, money that comes to you via your words or via the efforts that you've put out there. You could definitely get very curious around the taboo, wanting to investigate what's beneath the surface. You definitely could be emboldening a deeper level of intimacy within your connections, like really emboldening communication in order to get closer to your lover's soul. I know the Scorpio placements will love that. There definitely can be a focus around wanting to have the deeper conversations. Gemini is a surface level energy, but with it in the 8th house, it's anything but surface. There's definitely a curiosity around, let's talk about what's not being talked about. Let's talk about the taboo. Let's talk about your fears. Let's talk about it all. It's really the energy with Jupiter transiting the 8th. So if Jupiter is transiting your 9th house, you may be a Libra ascendant, you may be a Libra sun, or you just have Gemini somewhat within your 9th house. Wherever you fall within those categories, this message is for you. And this is a time to look out at the world through the lens of possibility. I want to highlight firstly that Jupiter transiting an air sign does benefit the air signs. And I know I'm talking to a lot of Libra placements. So this can be a time around feeling more blessings, or at least having more of a faith in the universe overall. A lot of you have been through some challenging times, just having South Node most likely in your sign, eclipses in your sign. If not your sign, likely your 1st and 7th house, which tends to just shake things up and sometimes makes our sense of self feel a little muddied or confusing. And with Jupiter in 9th house, there's a nudge within the cosmos to explore. Now that what is no longer aligned with you has departed your life, with Jupiter in the 9th house, now is time to figure out what is for you. It's time to expand into new horizons. It's time to go new places. It's time to learn new things. Now, with Jupiter transiting the 9th, this absolutely can be a time for amazing travel experiences. I just want to say, I just had this transit and I took an opportunity to solo travel. I've never done that before, and it was one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done for myself. I always felt like I had to go with someone else, of course, be safe, but it was very empowering to go out and figure it out myself. And an unexpected blessing that I found through traveling alone that I absolutely could see come to the surface based on this transit for you is that I connected with all sorts of different people. Because I was by myself, I was more open to connection. I made more friends because I wasn't just like with someone. I was like, well, I've talked to somebody. Who can I talk to? Like, I was just open to connection when I was there. Like, I shared a kayak with a political journalist from Denmark. I met a subscriber when I was on an excursion. That was absolutely wild. She's familiar with the channel. She's watched Magic Monday. I befriended the sweet woman who worked at my favorite fruit stand. It was like the first day I went. We just kind of chit-chatted. The second day I went, we talked for like 10 minutes. The next day that I went, she pulled up a chair and we would just talk forever. The last day I was there, the day before I left, I think I stayed at her fruit stand for like 2.5 hours. And keep in mind, there was definitely a language barrier, but you know, kindness and human to human interaction knows no bounds, right? And those are experiences, those are connections I likely wouldn't have had I gone with somebody else. And I certainly wouldn't have been in Thailand had I waited for somebody else to enter my life and plan it. Like, sometimes you have to take charge of your world. And I highlight that particularly because to the Libra placement, sometimes there can be an energy around, I need a partner to do this, I need a partner to do this. Be open to making your own memories and explore all that life has in store for you. Like with Jupiter and Gemini in the 9th house, start to see experiences like lessons. It could be very healing to it around, even if there's been things that have been very painful, like really start to rewrite the story of your life and think those experiences, only if you're there, right? The healing journey is messy. Sometimes we're not quite there to be able to see the lesson, but being able to be like, thank you for teaching me boundaries. Thank you for teaching me patience. Thank you to this challenging situation for teaching me my own strength. Like, the more that you can wrap up these harsh life lessons and see the data in it, the more that it's allowing you to progress in a more free sense. It's giving very thank you next. If you know that Ariana Grande song, it's giving this energy around, these experiences were painful, but I'm going to weave them into my overall life architecture and really just find the data in it and really just find what I learned from it with this Gemini energy. Outside of traveling, 9th house is also around higher education. So some of you could go to university. If you are in college, if you are in academia, with Jupiter and Gemini, this can be a time of working on a significant research project or the word getting out on something that you are a part of. You can find that there's more communication with your academic groups, like there could be more of a social vibe within school overall. If you've been wanting to write a book, this could be a beneficial time around publishing, getting the word out there with your marketing of your book. Some of you could get really into spirituality. You're wanting to learn. You're going down a rabbit hole. Gosh, it is my favorite experience in Self Care Astrology when I get to connect with people where they're just starting on their astrology rabbit hole, because I connect with them so deeply. I'm like, I remember what that feels like. And it's such a sweet, pure place to be in when a subject, again, just astrology as an example, but like numerology or anything, when it begins to open itself up to you and you're just so curious and you want to dig into it. It's just so rich. It's such a sweet part of life. And some of you might be entering that. You're wanting to learn. You're wanting to dial more into your intuition. I see that. You know, you can overthink it a lot, but with Jupiter and Gemini, it's seeing your intuition as data. Okay, this will help your logical mind see your intuition as a really viable compass towards pointing you in the direction of the life that you desire. Write down the times that your intuition told you something and you didn't trust it. Like, literally write it down, and then write down the times that your intuition told you something and you listened, right? Like, start to see it as data, and that'll help you differentiate what's coming from my intuition and what's coming from my like nervous, air sign mind or what have you. But overall, with Jupiter in Gemini, even if it's not physically traveling, it's mentally traveling, it's spiritually traveling, it's getting out of your comfort zone, it's going to new places, it's being open to new people, it's being open to new perspectives. I definitely think even if you're not able to travel during this time, you could make major connections with people who are abroad. You could even start to work abroad. You're realizing how valuable it is to be able to connect with people who come from a different background than your own, how much you can have to learn from these sort of connections. So it's a time to be open to life. The world is your oyster. If Jupiter in Gemini will transit the 10th house of your astrological natal chart, this message is for you. You may be a Virgo sun, you may be a Virgo rising, you may just have Gemini within the 10th house. Either way, this is a time to embrace the limelight. This is a time that you can experience significant career advancement. This is a time in which you can be talked about more widely. And for the Virgo placements that I'm speaking to, because I know I'm speaking to quite a few, there can be an energy where you feel more comfortable working behind the scenes or allowing your efforts to do the talking. This is a beautiful quality. But this is a time in which you need to get comfortable putting yourself out there. A lot of you are too humble. Stop. Stop it right now. With Jupiter and Gemini, you need to start talking about what it is that you're doing. You need to start sharing reviews of your business. You need to start talking about your service. Like, closed mouths don't get fed when Jupiter's transiting Gemini. And some of you are being so humble to your own detriment. And with Jupiter and Gemini, Jupiter is not comfy here. So the blessings that we have access to are only going to come about if you are actively working this Mercury muscle. And by working this Mercury muscle, I mean putting yourself out there, putting your words out there, putting that book out there, or putting that podcast out there, investing more in social media, even taking certain classes that are going to support your growth. Again, if you're not a business owner and you're not a social media creator, this could also be the energy around being more vocal with your boss around what's my advancement here, or having to be more vocal around, raise or promotion or taking charge of certain leadership opportunities. There may be a need during this time to put yourself out there, whether that's at your current career or even potentially Jupiter energy can make it clear where is that we've outgrown a certain path. A lot of you have Gemini in the 10th. And this indicates that when it comes to career, you need to continually be learning. And if you feel like you can do your job in your sleep, if you feel like you are not learning, if you feel like you are not connecting with people who are like-minded, Jupiter energy can make you feel more restless around craving more expansion, around wanting to take your career into a new direction, wanting to move forward in some essence can be a focus during this time. So you're either growing within your current career or you're pivoting to grow elsewhere. It is worth noting that this transit is not without challenges. And it is important that you stay integral with your word. This may be a time in which you have to get comfortable with more people talking about you, more people judging you. Virgo placements, you guys judge yourselves so harshly that you can fear putting yourself out there because you feel like other people are going to judge you as harshly as you judge yourself. And that's a fear that's going to limit your growth. With Jupiter and Gemini, make sure you're staying in integrity with yourself. Don't leverage, cheap marketing strategies to get your business out there. Or don't try to leverage, outrage marketing. If you're a social media creator, like, stay in integrity. That is what Jupiter is about. But so long as you're in integrity, there is an energy coming in with Jupiter squaring Saturn around, to be corny, haters are going to hate. Haters are going to hate, right? Regardless, especially if you're shining, especially if you're starting to vocalize, hey, I'm good at this, or hey, look at all of the amazing results that I've had for my clients, or hey, look what I'm doing if you want to come work with me. Especially if people are used to being able to keep you in a box, if people are used to being able to manipulate you or even get you to overwork because you did not see your own value. With this energy, you're stepping up as a leader. And I just see there's a little bit of tension around you stepping into your power in this way. And with Saturn in the 7th, your career is growing and your connections need to grow to support it. This hater energy might be coming from a significant partnership within your life around, why are you always working? You have no time for me. It really makes it clear around the direction that you're growing in and going in. And if your connections, your partnerships, your clients, your business partners, what have you, are able to support that, or if they're bringing you down, there may be certain tensions like that showing up. And with this energy of growth, you have most likely for majority of this transit, North Node and Chiron within the 8th. So contemplate different ways that you could be bringing money in, like with Jupiter and Gemini. Let's say you have a post that goes viral, but all of your offerings are completely contingent about your time. It might be a time to get creative around ways that you can multiply your time and energy, earning more from that viral moment or what have you. And so with Jupiter and Gemini, network, communicate. If you're unsatisfied within work, if you don't feel like it's evolving in a way that you want, reach out to past bosses, reach out to your network, invest in education even. Some of you might even find there's opportunities to start working abroad. This is your 4th house ruler, so some of you could even move elsewhere in order to work or in order to advance career in some way, which could equally bring up shakeups within relationships with Saturn within the 7th house. But there really is this opportunity to get the word out there about what it is that you do. And this is a time in which you can experience a major boost in terms of popularity and reputation. So if Jupiter and Gemini will transit the 11th house of your natal chart, this message is for you. You may be a Leo sun, you may be a Leo rising, or you may just have Gemini somewhat within your 11th house. Either way, you are really expanding gift of the gab during this time. You are socializing and connecting with all sorts of people during this time. And when it comes to Jupiter in Gemini, this is a time around being open to new friends, new colleagues, networking with new types of people, as well as intentionally bucketing energy towards the existing connections that you've made. Even like reconnecting with classmates or things of that nature can be beneficial during this time because your net worth is in your network. And I don't mean that in terms of money. I mean in terms of opportunity during this time. People are going to be the vehicles that give you opportunities during this transit. So invest in your networks, invest in those that you are connected to. You can find that significant blessings come your way the more that you are intentionally putting yourself out there to network, the more that you're prioritizing social events. You can find that when you want something, a friend of a friend knows someone who can bring you that very thing. Like with Jupiter and Gemini, it will take a little bit more effort on your part. You may intentionally have to put the word out there around, hey, does anybody know someone who provides this service? Or hey, does anybody know someone who could link me to this opportunity or link me to this company? We will have to use our voice in order to reap these opportunities. But when I say Jupiter brings opportunities, so be willing to communicate what it is that you want, not in like a using people way, but more so around investing in your network. Gemini is the energy of connection. So also find ways that you can connect people in your network to other people within your social circles. Like definitely the more you give, the more you receive. So with Jupiter in 11th house, be open to help the people within your network. It's not just around ourselves getting fed. This can be a time around being able to invest in your friendships, expand your connections, and thus expand your own blessings as well as other people's blessings as well. That's what I love about Geminis, is that Geminis are so gifted at being able to link together people or to make connections. And with Jupiter transiting this sector, be open to do that for others and be open for others to do that for you. I remember I had a professor in university who said, it's one hand reaching up, one hand reaching down, and that there's going to be people, mentors, things of that nature who will help pull you up. But when you get pulled up, whether that's to a professional level or anything else, also extend that hand down. Be open to mentee other individuals. Like that is what life is about, is around being able to help others. And on that note, I want to highlight, this is a very humanitarian house. So with Jupiter in 11th house, be open to connect or network with groups of people who are like-minded, who envision the future similarly to you. This can be a time around you starting a club or leveraging social media in order to get the word out there on important causes that are important to you. If you are a social media creator, you can most certainly experience a boom as it relates to your social media marketing efforts. Your following, your audience can absolutely go through an expansive period during this time. Now, if you've been wanting to start a social media, this is an incredibly aligned time to do so. With Jupiter and Gemini, it's time to share your thoughts and share your visions for the future. You could be inspiring the way that you are communicating how it is that you see the future, and the changes that you want to see can be something that's very magnetizing during this time. This is the house of the future, hopes and dreams. That's why I keep saying it. So with Jupiter transiting here, there's really not just one sector of life in which you will manifest through. Like, yes, it'll show up via people. You could definitely make more friends. You could feel more social during this time. But overall, you can find you're looking out at the future through this optimistic lens, right? And with Jupiter in Gemini, you are open to the education or the perspectives that will help you in building the future that you desire. And outside of your own individual future, it's all around humanity's future overall. And with Jupiter in Gemini in the 11th house, you could definitely be wanting to help humanity progress. You could be contemplating, how can I use my voice or my connections in order to further the changes I want to see on this planet overall? And I just feel for you, it's a time to dream bigger. It's a time to be open to new ways of viewing yourself and viewing the world. Like, really ask yourself if you're dreaming big enough, if you're, pushing your luck enough. Like, it is worth noting that 11th house has to do with fortune, and Jupiter rejoices in the 11th house. So you do have a certain degree of luck on your side, particularly if you are aligning yourself to Gemini-like energies, being open to other people's perspectives, learning from your networks, making connections intentionally, voicing what it is that you want, what you want the future to look like. This world can be a magical place if you co-create it as such. So with Jupiter in the 11th house, like, really ask yourself how big you're dreaming. And I do want to say, some of you may find that if you're around people who don't see the world similarly, who aren't dreaming big, this may be a time in which you are feeling more inclined to wanting to expand beyond your current friendships, wanting to be around people who dream bigger, who have intelligent conversations, who want to make the world a more beautiful place. You may find that you are open to new friendships to come into your experience during this time. Be willing to think about what your ideal reality would be, and you never know. Be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it when Jupiter's transiting your 11th house. If Jupiter in Gemini will transit the 12th house of your astrological natal chart, this message is for you. You may potentially be a Cancer sun, you may be a Cancer ascendant, or you just have some Gemini within your 12th house. Nevertheless, this is an expansion of things that are private and secret. So for a majority of the video, I've been saying this is a time to share and voice and put your word out there. For you all, I would do so with caution. Not that there's any significant harm that's coming your way. This actually is a time around being very spiritually protected. But when it comes to 12th house, this is the house of secrets. And with Jupiter in Gemini, this might be a time in which you're more inclined to want to share your secrets or even share other people's secrets. This could be a time in which other people are talking about things that you've kept private. It's not unheard of that during this time, sometimes there can be, duplicitous affairs or secret relationships, things that are under wraps. And so with Jupiter in Gemini, there could be potentially themes around the word getting out there around those sort of activities. So I would just be mindful around that. But outside of that random application, I want to say you are in this preparatory stage, because next year, Jupiter will enter your sign if you're a Cancer, or it'll enter your first house eventually. And that's a time around putting yourself out there, being visible. And so whenever I think about something transiting the 12th house before the first, I think of drawing back before we launch an arrow forward, right? It's kind of a time in which we come inward and we prep for this visibility that we are calling in when Jupiter enters our sign or enters our first house. So there is a certain focus on preparing for this very expansive time of your life. This can be a time around creating closure in your life, around anything you don't want to take with you into this next cycle. Like a new cycle is initiating for you next year. So really being intentional around, what don't I want to take with me into this next cycle? That could be habits, okay? That could be destructive tendencies. A lot of you overthink a lot, okay? And you might even turn to things in an effort to get away from your thoughts. And that might be something that you are healing or wanting to release as you prepare for this expansive energy. You might be investing more so in therapy or even NLP or meditation, things that can genuinely support your mind and create healthier ways to cope, healthier ways to talk to yourself beneath the surface. Like I said, you are very protected during this time. So with Jupiter in the 12th house, your spirit guides are really with you. Your ancestors are really with you. You could experience an enhancement in any sort of mediumship abilities or connection to the other side. Your dreams may have many messages for you, okay? With the energy of Gemini, dreams can be a really accurate way that the universe is communicating to you. I shared this in Magic Monday, but if you're ever feeling lost on a situation, ask Spirit to show you the truth in a dream. It'll come through loud and clear. I was like, should I have this person in my life? And I dreamt that this person made me a scrapbook filled with all of the ways about why they no longer loved me. Like, I remember one of the headings was like, I used to love you and now I no longer do. And I woke up and I was like, okay, Universe, you didn't have to be so clear, but seriously, it was direct. And I do feel like with Jupiter transiting a Mercury ruled sign, it might not be what you wanted to hear, but your dreams could absolutely have messages for you. And even when we consider intuition, you could find an enhancement of automatic writing. You could find your channeling a lot easier during this time. Some of you, this prep is you are kind of being more hermited away in order to learn a new skill. You are perfecting your craft in order to benefit from this more visible energy, especially when we consider that this is your 6th house ruler and your 9th house ruler. Some of you could be engaged in a long program of some sort. Some of you could even be in grad school, finishing that up and having to be a little bit more in solitude in order to tie up loose ends. But everything that you're doing now, even if it's private, even if it's behind the scenes, will pay off when Jupiter crosses over into the 1st house. Sometimes with Jupiter in the hidden house and in detriment, you could be like, universe, like, are you on my side? It feels like my luck is hidden. But what I want to say is that things are working out for you, even if it feels like they are not. It's important with Jupiter in 12th house to just trust that the universe has got you. What's being removed from your life is being removed for a reason, and keep trusting in the new cycle that is initiating when Jupiter eventually enters Cancer, right around the corner now. So my loves, with Jupiter transiting Gemini, fortune favors the communicative, the curious, and the comedic. So I'd love to know, how are you planning to co-create with this influence? Yes, the planet of luck is in territory it does not particularly like to be in, but so long as we stay open to learn, so long as we are open to other perspectives, so long as we are being open to pivot, so long as we are laughing at life, this can absolutely be an expansive time of leveling up into a new era of our own learning, a new era of our own mind, and a new era of our own openness to other humans and their perspectives. So let me know below what you are looking forward to about this transit, what you are not looking forward to about this transit. My Instagram handle is @HaleyCometAstrology. My TikTok is the same. I would still love to connect with you over there. I want to let you know that Self Care Astrology is having monthly group classes all year long if you're craving some celestial support for what it is that you are moving through. It's such a special cosmic community. I feel so grateful to work one-on-one with so many of you, as well as being able to connect with you in your charts with group classes. So make sure to check that out. There is a promo code to save 22% off. Invest in your learning. It's the Jupiter and Gemini way. But until we meet again, drink lots of water and stay cosmic.